In part 1, we did bring the PDF into an Excel. We looked at different ways of bringing a PDF tabular table into an Excel. So now we're going to start working on the actual Excel file, and we will be now filling up different columns that we need so that it is ready for us to upload onto Google Admin Console. This is the file that we are trying to populate. It requires the first name, last name, email address, password is required, and another set of data, which is the organizational unit that is required in order for it to be populated and for us to upload onto Google Admin Console. So working on this is the file that we've been working on. So here you see that the first name are in lowercase. This needs to come here. We need to make the first letter of this first name as capital. In order to do this, we're going to be using an Excel command which is proper, and we're just going to select our B2 as our column. And once I press enter, you can see that it has turned that first name into a proper name that you want to appear as their first name, with just having the first letter as capital. Same is in this case, the whole column is in capital. So if we use the same command here for C2, which is the last name, and we press enter, that's exactly how we want the name to appear here. Once the user log on to their email, that's how they should be able to see their first name and last name. So that's how, using this command, which is just a proper, it will convert that into the first letter to be capital, and same is in the case of the last name. I can now drag this down, and these two columns will now be completed. Now I can copy these two columns and I can take it to this main file where I'm going to put the data in from this file. So I can copy this across and paste onto this Google login pupil CSV. Now we can move on to the email addresses. I have different scenarios here based on different circumstances or different policies that different organizations have. So we'll be working with different scenarios. So for example, if we just want the both names, first name and the last name, to appear as they are, we can use Concatenate as the Excel command, and we can just pick up those two columns. So G2 in this case will pick up the first name from there, although we want a dot to appear between the two names, so we're going to use as a dot for a column. We'll put that into a speech mark, and then after the comma we're going to pick up the H2, which is the last name in this case. So now it's going to pick up the first name, put a dot between, and then the last name, and after that we're going to use the email version of @ we'll just pick up a name of organization, summerschool.com, and we have to close up the speech mark there, and the whole thing has to be closed with the bracket, needs to be closed with this. So now once I press enter, you can see that it has put the first name and the last name as they are. In this case, because there is a space between the last names, so in this particular case, this has a middle name too, so it's going to join the two and keep the dot as a separator If that's how you make up your email addresses, you can just drag this column down, and all of those data it will automatically pick up, and the email addresses will be created in this way. So that's how you can create email addresses if you just picking up the name, first and last name. Now, for example, if we just want to pick up the initial of the first name rather than the first name, the full first name, in this case we have to use, after concatenate, we have to use a left command. Left will tell Excel to, in order to pick up the left letter, and we're just going to mark it to first letter. So G2 and comma 1 will just going to pick up the first letter from the first name, and then we're going to use the rest of the formula will exactly be the same as we had it previously. So it's going to have a comma dot, then H2 as the last name, and then we're going to close it with @someschool.com. And when we close the bracket and press enter, now it's going to just have the first letter from the first name with a dot, and that's how it's going to pick up, and it's going to display the email address in this way. If that's how you create your email addresses, with the first letter of the first name and a full surname or the last name, you can just drag this whole column across and your email addresses are done in this scenario. Well, email addresses don't really begin with capital letters in the first name or the last name. They are generally all lowercase, and that's how you give or you make email addresses for your people, for your clients. So in order to make these, that the first letter of the first name to go as a lower letter, well, we could have used a B2 instead, because initially the first name begins with a small letter. So either you could have just select or change this from G2 to B2, which is already in small letter. So that's how you will pick up a small letter as the first name, or the first letter of this first name to be a lower letter. But if I want to now use a formula instead and pick it up from our G column, so in order to do this, I will have to, just before left, I will have to use a lower command. Lower begins with or it begins brackets after that. So since I have used an extra bracket, I will have to close this after left, and now when I press enter, it has done the same thing. So now it has picked up it has made the first letter of our first name as a lowercase. We can drag this down, and that will make the whole email addresses, the first letter of the first name will now begin with a lowercase. Now we note here that our first name has now become lower, the initial of it has become lower, but our surname still begins with a capital letter. We can sort this out. We can also work this out by using the same lower command just before the column H3. So now we are using exactly the same thing. After using the lower command, Excel will give you using the command, you have to open up and close the bracket again, and that's how it will make the last name as lowercase as well. So I'm going to do the same thing with the first row. Put lower there, just before the H2, open bracket, and now we have to close this bracket here. Go to the end, press enter, and it has turned that into, now the both first name and the last name both are beginning with a lowercase, we can drag this down, and if that's how you make up your email addresses, that it begins with the first letter of the first name and the full last name, you have completed your email addresses here. You can just drag this down or copy this and put this onto your file. That was one of the scenario completed. That now we're gonna go to the scenario where we use some random numbers when we are giving these to and the reason why you will do that is because sometimes there are names that are if you got 800, 900,000, 2,000 clients there, or different pupils or students, and you're making email accounts for them. In many cases you will have the identical names. So in order to differentiate that, we can use random numbers. So if that is how you make your accounts, then you'll go to this K column. That's where we're going to be working on him. I'm just copying the same formula back in here. So now I got the email addresses just like I have for the column J. But here at the end of the last name, I'm going to use an extra command, and I'm going to put and ran between. So it is and ran between, and I'm going to now, because I want 3 random numbers to appear at the end of the last name, so I've put 100 to 999, so it's going to give me a random number between 999, and I will now drag this column down, and it's going to do the same thing now for the whole different columns. So that's how you will complete the first name, last name with the 3 random numbers. Now here's another scenario, that instead of picking up the first letter from the first name, what if we just have to pick first 3 letters, first 3 characters of the first name and the last name. So in order to do this, after the lower, we're going to go back into left and just going to use the first 3 characters from the last name. So we're going to put left and now put that into bracket. In order to use the 3 characters after H2 column, I'm telling Excel to pick up the first 3 characters from the last name. Pressing this enter, so I can see now I have the first letter of the first name and first 3 characters from the last name and a random number after that. This is generally more likely you will be making, or we make, email accounts. So that now we have picked up the first letter of the first name with a dot, and we've picked up the first 3 characters from the last name and a random 3-word numbers after that. So now we come up to using the same thing in L, column L. So slower, picking up left, and now picking up the G2, first 3 characters from the first name. Now because we want to pick up the first 3 characters from the first name, so we're putting G2 and 3, so it's going to go a lowercase first 3 letters from G2 column is going to pick up the first 3 characters from there. Now I want a dot between as a separator, so dot in speech marks, comma. Now I'm going to pick up lower again, open bracket, and left of. Now I have to go back and look at the column for the last name, which is now is in this case H2. Pressing and after, since I want to pick maybe another 3 characters there, or maybe 9 characters. It's up to you how many characters you want to pick up there. Let's go with 9, or I can make it 15. As many characters as you want. Whatever you want to pick up from their last name, you will pick up those, put that number there, and it's going to close again at sumschool.com. And once I press enter, I have made a mistake here. Oh yes, beginning of this formula, since I open up an extra bracket for lower, I need to close it just after here. I have to have an extra bracket and follow it over here as well. So now when I press enter, that's how it will. So now I have the first 3 letters of the first name, and I have picked up 9 characters there. I could have turned that into, I don't know, maybe 15 or something. So it will pick up the full name, as many characters as you want. So I will just change it to, if I just do H2 only, it's going to only pick up the first letter. You don't even have to mention the word or number 1 after that. So what I have now is the first 3 letters of the first name dot 1 letter or first letter of the last name, and that's how it has make up this email address. If that's how you want it, you can drag this down, and that will populate the whole column with this sort of email addresses. But instead I'm going to now make up first 3 letters of the last name too. So now I have first 3 letters from the first name, first 3 letters from the last name. And if that's how you make your email addresses, you can drag this down, and that will populate the whole column. As I said, you can pick up 9, you can pick up 15, so I'm just going to go with 15 so that the whole last name appears there. And drag this down. If there are less character, maximum of 15. So if there's a long last name, that will also appear over there. So that's how you can complete that column. And now we will work on to the password. This is actually, in our case, we just use this first letter of the first name, first 3 letters from the last name, and we have random selected 3 numbers in order to differentiate. So I'm going to copy this, select this, comment all the data from there. Mind you, this is a live data, so every time it is refreshed, it's going to give a new random 3 numbers there, which I don't really want. So instead of just copy and pasting it, I will paste the values of it here, so that stays as static rather than dynamic, that it keeps on changing. So now these will become the email addresses for those people in my scenario. So now in this scenario, when we have completed our email addresses, we only got passwords to complete now. So we're going to go back onto our sheet. Now there could be different scenarios, there could be different policies that you have for your passwords. You can just assign everybody a generic password, or maybe the password can be just the word password, and then once the user logs in, then they are forced to change their passwords. In our case, it's mostly not the issue. It's mostly we do not allow our students to have their own passwords, because it's quite common for them to forget the passwords, and then we have to keep on changing it. So what we can do is to give them a random character password, and they have this password throughout their use of this email address. So as I just we can use a command like character random between. If I just do 1 to 100, that is not going to work, because Excel has a certain characters as assigned characters, so it will be 65 to 90, and it will pick up a capital letter or uppercase character in this scenario, or in this case. So the command will be character random, select randomly between 65 to 90 will give us a uppercase character, and then if I want more than one of those characters, I have to join it with and then I'm going to repeat the same command again. Char rand between 65 and 90, and that's going to give me another uppercase character. So now I can copy this and from and onwards, and I can copy it for as long as I want, maybe just go for 4 of those characters. So that will give us randomly selected capital letters, capital characters, 4 of them, and we can, if this is how you want the passwords to be, so you can just drag this down and copy this across, or maybe we can join this with some random numbers at the end, so you have a combination of character as well as numbers. So if that's the case, then we can copy this across and now end it with rand between, say we want 3 random numbers at the end, so now 100 to 999. So this will now give us 4 uppercase characters and 3 randomly selected numbers. That's how the password will be. That's how you can generate a combination of characters as well as numbers in your password. So if that's how you want it, you can just drag this across, drag this down actually, and this will copy up all the password throughout the column there. We will list what Excel actually requires. Over here from 65 to 90 will give you uppercase character. If you want a lowercase character in your password, it will be 97 to 122. You can also use special characters to make the password even more stronger, and for that it is 33 to 47. So if I want to use a combination of these 3, uppercase, lowercase and a special character, I can copy this formula across here, maybe keep the first character or the first letter as a capital, change the second one, so now I will change it from 97 to 122, third character as well. So this is now going to give me 3 first letter as a capital, and next 3 to be small or lowercase character, and randomly selected 3 numbers. I can also maybe make the last character as a special character, so I have to select 33 to 47, and now that will give me a special character at the end of so it's a combination of uppercase, lowercase and numbers with a special character that will make a very strong password. It's a good way of generating some strong passwords. So if that's how you want your password policy to be, you can just use that one there. So I'm going to go back into selecting the first letter. In my case it's all small letters, so I'm going to use first 3 letters as small, first 4 as a small characters, with 3 randomly selected numbers. So because this is how I make my password, so I'm going to drag this down throughout the column and copy this onto my Google sheet. I'm just going to paste the values there. So now these are going to be the password of those selected pupil, and that will complete our first 4 columns here. Now what is left is just the organizational unit. Now mind you, before you start populating this, as I said that before, that you already have to design this or already have to create this into your Google admin console. So I have in my case I will have a character, they all go into a pupil character. So in order to show it here, so I'm going to tidy this up. So for the organizational unit, they begin with the character. What I have is in my pupil character. I'm going to pick up the year group or year number from here. So it begins in my case as a pupil, then / the word year appears, and after that the year group. So for this row 2, it will look like this. So it will be pupil. Actually I have to put a / before, because it's also a container. So the container organizational unit I have is pupil / with year as a word, and then it picks up the year number from the column D, and then / the form group. So if I want to automate it now, so the formula, I will go back to concatenate, and now I'm going to use it. It has to display / pupil here, so I'm going to put that into speech marks, comma, then the year, the word year, comma again, and now it's going to pick up the year number from this column D. So now I'm going to put this as D2 here, comma again, and it has to display another / so that will be in speech marks, and then comma, and that's where in the column E is going to pick up the registration group from here. So I'm going to mention this E2 there. So I'm going to copy this formula, put that back into row 2, so that I can populate the rest of the column there. And when I drag this down, so now I have here this organizational unit, how it is set up for me. So if, for example, you require a space between year 2, your sub-container for the year groups are year /1 /2, you have to add an extra space mark there. But in my case, that's how they are set up. So I'm going to copy and paste the data from this Excel onto my main Google sheet here, and that will now conclude all of those fields or the columns that is required for me to make these email addresses. So that concludes our exercise and the task that we were trying to do. I hope you like this. Was it useful, hopefully, for somebody who was looking into how creating wealth accounts? Thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next video.